On behalf of Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, we express our sincere thanks for joining this special talk on compliances under hospitality sector and analysis. The session is organized under the joint aegis of Banking, Finance and Corporate Affairs Expert Committee and Tourism, Hospitality and Facility Expert Committee. For the kind information of our members, the Banking, Finance and Corporate Affairs Expert Committee is chaired by Dr. Om Prakash, Advocate and Founder Director, Cont Consultancy, co-chaired by Mr. Joydeep Nag, Head Technology Enabling Center, Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham, and mentored by Mr. Venkat Krishnan, Advisor, Tata Hitachi Construction Machinery. The Tourism, Hospitality and Facility Expert Committee is chaired by Mr. Vineet Verma, who is the Director, Brigade Hospitality and Managing Director, WTC Bengaluru. On behalf of the committees and on behalf of the Chamber, we express our sincere thanks to Mr. P.G. Subramaniam for accepting our invitation to address at this session. For the benefit of the members and to avoid disturbing, we have disabled the audio and video for all the participants, and during the Q&A session, it will be enabled. Now I will hand over the stage to Dr. Om Prakash. Over to you, sir.
Good morning, all of you, and welcome to this webinar on the compliances on hospitality by P.G. Subramaniam, our committee member. And I also heartily welcome the chairman for Hospitality Expert Committee, Mr. Vineet Verma, who was happy to join us. This is the first time both the committees are joining hands, and more to come, because this hospitality industry was worst affected, I can say, out of all the industry. And this is going to boomerang, and it will be on top once again, is what we expected, because we were witnessing in the last few months, that is November, December, all the hotels were full, and everybody had their wanted to go out. So now again, after this third wave, I think people are again looking forward, and this summer is again going to be on. It could be one of the best money churners. I don't know. This is what I feel. Maybe Mr. Vineet Verma can put some view on this. Sir, any couple of words?
Good morning, everyone, and
Good morning.
I also heartily welcome Mr. Subramanian for agreeing to speak at this very, very useful panel discussion. To respond to Om Prakash's thing, there's a saying in Hindi that "Aapke muh mein ghee shakkar." I hope what you said comes true for hospitality sector, and that we start making money all over again. So we are actually all living on hope, and God forbid if there's no fresh hurdle coming up in hospitality, we are hopeful that we'll get back into business soon. But unfortunately, now this Ukraine war has also been, that has further impacted particularly international travel. So there's also a saying that that if the economy sneezes, the first sector to get affected is hospitality. So fingers crossed. I won't take much time right now. We'll take it as we go forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Vineet. Yes, definitely the war situation, if it aggravates, we have a situation again. The rest of the world, people are getting panicked. Secondly, why this topic? Why we chose the compliance for hospitality? I have not heard about it. We do compliances for companies and other sectors, but hospitality has a different compliances, and the speaker here has a vast experience in the hospitality industry. And just because the COVID has passed away, a lot of hospitality industry, a lot of hotels have been closed. Many people have been terminated, and now everybody is reassembling. And this is the stage where we need to take stock of how the compliance has been done, whether they have complied all the necessary government regulatory rules, everything has been complied or not. that is why we have the speaker here. And before moving on to this session, I would like to introduce Mr. PG Subramanian, the guest speaker of the day. So he is a fellow member of Institute of Chartered Accountants, and he carries over 45 years of experience in senior level across the industry verticals, mainly in manufacturing, hospitality, and finance. So we are talking about a very senior person here who has soiled his hands across varied uh, industry domains, and he has close to 30 years of experience in manufacturing sector, and he has covered corporate finance, taxation, indirect taxes, and he was also part of implementing SAP. He has 15 years of experience in five-star property, including launching several initiatives aimed at cost reduction, innovation practices, in improving the operational efficiency, CRM innovations. Then again, the corporate governance. Was recently a president of, and CFO of a five-star deluxe property, which is Hotel Cum Resorts. So he's not willing to mention the names, but if you see his overall expertise, his expertise is into hospitality, manufacturing, and the core finance, as he's a chartered accountant. So let's hear him what he has to say. A graduate from University of Bombay, then went on to do his chartered accountancy in his young age. Then now he is a member of the expert committee of banking finance and also a member of ASCON group on MSME and taxation. Uh, he's been involved in also revision of syllabus for CPT, IPCC, and IPCCI accounting. These are all the subcommittees of the Institute of Chartered Accountants. He's very active there, and I hope he's going to bring more value to this webinar through his expert on the industry and also as a professional. Welcome to you, sir. Mr.
Thank you very much, sir.
And on to
Thank
you.
you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. At the outset, I would like to thank the Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce for giving me an opportunity to share my experience in the hospitality sector. As Dr. Om Prakash very correctly mentioned, even though the compliances are all common to all the sectors, there are some specific compliances which are required to be complied with the hospitality industry. As all of us are aware, the past 2 years has been very, very tumultuous for the industry, with most of the industry bottoming out. Many of them have shut out, with very people being dismissed from the services, and definitely compliance would have taken a backseat. In this short presentation, I will try to delve on the compliance procedures that are required to be managed by the hospitality sector. Let us begin with what compliance means, the meaning of compliance is all about. What we understand from the term compliance is adhering to all the laws and regulations, rules, etc., which are required to be met on timely basis by the company. I would like to pose a question. Do you think compliance is only adhering to the rules, procedures, etc., or there is something more to it? According to me, there is something more. That is, it is not only enough to comply with the laws and regulations. Whether we comply with it on a timely basis is more relevant. It is always better to be on time as far as compliances are concerned than be in time or overlook it. This is best served by having a compliance chart in front of us, listing down the various compliance procedures that is to be followed and following it to the T. In simple terms, compliance can be defined as adhering to regulations on timely basis so that there is no need to face penal action, allowing management to focus on business. See, every company, the owners and the board, etc., will have to dwell their time and energy on businesses. And this is more so in present times when businesses are very low level, taking away all the time of the management. So it is the responsibility of the finance and other teams to ensure that they are relieved of this burden of compliance, and this team takes over everything and ensures that all compliance are in place. Compliance requirements in hospitality industry are more due to multiple regulations that apply to sector. For instance, correct me, Mr. Verma, if I am wrong, our industry requires not less than close to about 100 permissions to be obtained, and keeps us on our toes to ensure that we don't go on the wrong side of the law at any given point of time. And unless there is a teamwork, each and every staff follow the letter and spirit, standard operating procedures and process to ensure smooth operation, because it is also not really necessary to ensure that we comply with the laws and regulations. We need to ensure that we follow the standard operating procedures that are laid down, processes that are laid down to the T. There should be no deviation. Compliance also includes a risk analysis of the standard operating procedures and process, so that if there is a need to revise these procedures, we are able to do it on time. Compliance also include due diligence exercise carried out as and when need arises, because as part of the due diligence exercise, we also go through the compliances that are gone through by the companies, including in the hospitality sector, so that there is no something big out of the blue comes. I can give you a small example. There was this hotel property which was being taken over by a large group. Due diligence process was done. Everything was put through. The hotel was acquired. But then some key areas which was necessarily related to statutory dues were left out, with the result that the new management took over, they were in for a shock, and they found out that the service tax collected, taxes collected, etc., were not remitted to the government, which put the hotel back by about 10 crores of rupees. This can be very damaging for a company which is taking over. So it's extremely necessary that we pour over it at a very small needle and this thing to see that we don't leave out anything. Then comes the need. Need for compliance is non-negotiable. I believe in this very, very much. There are no two reasoning about it. We need to ensure that we comply with our regulations requirements on a day-to-day basis, watching it very carefully, because the laws are changing so dynamically that compliance needs to be reviewed every day, every hour. For instance, in GST, there have been so much of notifications that it is very difficult to keep a tab on what is happening. A small deviation here and there will put us very, very badly into the problem. And it also requires adherence to state standards and processes in full. And as I mentioned, periodic assessment of compliance of each area is necessary, including processes and procedures. This is one which helps the hotel to run very, very levelly and govern properly. As I mentioned, compliance chart, this is best achieved through means of a compliance chart prepared well in advance for the year as a whole and reviewed on a periodical basis, normally on a monthly basis. According to me, this must be followed religiously and should be become part of the MIS, which is presented to the management on a monthly basis, so that corrective actions can be taken if there are deviations. And good compliance practices helps also in due diligence very, very easily. Scrutiny of compliance management. Recognizing the importance of compliance, of late, companies have appointed Chief Compliance Officer who ensures strict adherence to compliance practices, and this is normally done by the company secretary, who also acts as doubles as a compliance officer. Now, I would like to deviate a little bit and say why we have taken this due diligence part of the compliance exercise, because this thing was to delve on the complaint due diligence part of it. So I will restrict myself to the due diligence as far as compliance practice is concerned, and as far as compliance process is concerned, I have restricted myself to star category of hotels who are required to follow it. So due diligence exercise requires effective deployment of compliance procedures which may arise due to mergers, acquisitions, corporate restructuring, corporate governance related matters. This has been a very heated argument of late now because companies are scrambling across the board to ensure that good corporate governance practices are put in place. There are instances where corporate governance have failed due to the various factors which we need not delve into now. We are all aware of it. Then IPOs, FPOs, private equity, general compliance requirements, commercial agreements, leverage buyout, joint ventures. Due diligence in hospitality industry. Hospitality industry operates in different environment and service sector because this is a 24/7 operated industry, mainly dealing with the customers on a day-to-day basis and requires constant interaction with the customers. And more, this thing has to be put on, emphasis is on customer listening. So we need to be very, very careful in operating environment, like maintaining the environment very cleanly, and then following the various set standards of the food and license requirements. These are all very, very important. As I mentioned here, imperative to ensure that aspects related to industrial guest relations, past history, service agreements, loyalty program management, etc., which needs to be studied carefully. Coming to the loyalty program, every leading groups have what is called a loyalty program for the guests who patronage the hotel. Here, I am tempted to quote one instance where the loyalty program failed very miserably. One of the hotels entered into a loyalty program agreement with one of the outside vendors because they didn't want to manage it themselves. While executing the agreement, due diligence was not done properly, and the agreement executed was also not done correctly. With the result, it so happened that the entire money collected by the management people who managed it went to them instead of the money coming from here and then going back to the agent concerned. Plus, he had committed left, right, and center all kinds of benefits that are given to the guests without even consulting the hotel. With the result, when the guest landed here, the money had not come. He had already issued the cards to them, and we could not refuse the guest the facility to be enjoyed. As a result of which, a battle is going on between the company as well as the hotel about the money to be drawn, closing the program. So this is very, very important. This is only one of the examples where wrong principles are applied and due diligence is not carried out properly and complaints is not done. First step, preparation of comprehensive checklist covering all areas to elicit information before collating them. These are common things. Registered name of the company with details of subsidiary, if any, with address, date of incorporation, SIN number, history of the company, list of countries where the company is licensed to operate. This applies more to multinational hotel chains who have vast operating hotels across the border, and with the current business environment where Indian industries are also investing heavily in overseas things, this becomes very, very imperative. So we need to ensure what are the applicable laws in the country in which they operate, what licenses are required to be obtained, what compliance have to be gone through. All this needs to be studied very, very carefully. Then quality certification, if any, has to be seen. Then corporate organization and structure, details of with a description of the nature and size of such interest, any interest, including any partnerships, collaborations, business affiliates, association of persons. These are all more of a complaints in law, to be regulatory in nature. A list of subsidiaries, including overseas subsidiaries, if any, list of agreements executed. Agreements can mean many, many things. For instance, vendor agreements, agreements with the contractors, service providers, suppliers, then agents who book the hotel for us. Of late, digital booking is the order of the day. So the agreements entered with such vendors like Make My Trip, Go Happy these are all very, very important to look forward to. Then management, names of the members of the board of directors with a brief summary of their experience and directorships held, details of interest and shares, options, warrants, etc. issued to any of the directors or shareholders of the company, details of contracts in which shareholder directors are interested, details of any outstanding loans granted by the company to any of the directors' employees, names of key managerial personnel, share capital ownership, that like authorized, paid up shareholders, class of shares, unpaid shares, rights of shareholders, proposed issue of further shares, etc. Then comes secretarial and regulatory. Scrutinize the memorandum and articles of association to see that and confirm that the hotel industry confines itself to the objects clause of the memorandum and does not deviate from it and conducts the business. Certificate of incorporation, certificate of commencement of business, details of land parcels, whether owned or leased. This is very, very important. Many cases, hotels are all run on leased land, and where the lease ownership lies with the owner, the lease agreement is very, very important. What is the nature of the lease entered into? What is the lease rental payable? How long the lease remains? These are all very important to know. And also find out whether the owner has got a proper right to the property which he has leased it out to you, or else after starting the business, you find out that there is a ownership problem, you will get into serious trouble. And you will have time only to run around rectifying all these things. The list of all statute registers, encumbrances charged, that is, if the company has borrowed money, what are all the charges they have created, are there any encumbrances of the property, that's to be seen. Details of meetings means this includes the annual general meetings, extraordinary general meetings, board meetings, etc. It is not enough if you see whether the meetings have been held on time as per the statute requirement. You need to go through the minutes in minute detail to find out what the resolutions have been passed and whether there are any things which are required to be implemented arising out of the resolutions, and see they are implemented. And then if there is a deviation, you need to report on that. Then full list of consents, permits, licenses, including copies of all government regulatory consents relating to the business without limitation, all license, consents and permission required are the applicable statutes and as required at the planning stage of the hotel. This includes licenses, agreements with the contractors, permission from the local municipal corporation to build the hotel, so floor size, index, everything needs to be seen. Then hotels are obliged to, not that other industries are not obliged, you have to maintain standard rates and measures act, legal metrology act, prevention of food adulteration act, food safety and standards act, public performance license issued for phonographic performance limited, star classification issued with these. There are certain guidelines for issuing star classification ranging from 2 to 5 star and 5 star deluxe, etc. There are certain criteria which the hotels have to meet before the Ministry of Tourism issues this thing. That is, the hotels concerned have to have specific number of restaurants, facilities like health club, gym, spa, saloon, shopping area, and certain number of restaurants. Everything has to be there to meet the criteria based on which the star classification is given to them. Apart from getting the star classification, it is very, very necessary to ensure that we maintain those standards expected of you for continuing to be classified as a star hotel, because this classification is normally renewed every 5 years by the Ministry of Tourism. It's very important and is subject to inspection every now and then. Then trade license issued to run restaurants, registration issued in the Registration Tourist Trade Act, license to sell liquor, run discotheque, health club, etc. In financial, audited financials together a statutory auditor's report for last year. Pour through that to find out whether any loopholes are there, where auditors' comments, adverse comments have been raised with the auditors, so that is addressed correctly. See, the previous due diligence which I referred to, had it gone through the audited financials correctly, they would have dug out the liabilities which are not remitted by the previous management concerned. Then copies of management accounts prepared along with reconciliation between financial management accounts. This is one of the casualties in owner and hotels where not much importance is given to management accounts, despite knowing the fact that it is going to help them in running the operations very correctly, because it helps them to find out what loopholes have been there, what targets are not being met, and reconciliation is very, very necessary. And copies of all MAS reports, including event budgets and P&L. See, what we do in the industry is normally, for every event of a major size, budgets are prepared and those budgets are followed up with the profit and loss account of the event concerned to find out whether that event has brought in some money or whether it has resulted in a loss. What could be the reason for it? How do you, going forward, how do you rectify it? Because the industry operates in a very competitive environment and it may not be possible for us to get the rates we demand unless we are a very, very high class hotel. So we fight for the business. At the same time, we need to see that at least we are when we conduct an event, we don't end up in a loss. And if you don't make bumper profit, it's all right, but we need to ensure that we keep our head above water. And MA's report also need to be prepared department-wise, and that is possible only when you have a department-wise budget. Here, more important is keeping control, very strict control on food and beverage cost, fuel cost, etc., which cannot go beyond one level. This needs to be monitored very, very closely. And copies of all the budgets, details of dividend payers, including policy thereon, copy of unaudited financial statement of recent period, accounts receivables, payable, dispute if any, details of capital expenditure, cash flow statements and working capital management statement, role of cost controller and night auditor. The cost controller plays a very large role in ensuring that things are under control. His duties are very onerous. I can recall the instance of one of the hotels where the cost controller was there for the namesake only. He never understood what his role was. With the result, we never had a system of preparing a proper cost statement on a month-on-month basis on food, etc. No recipe costing was happening. All this led us into very serious trouble because we never knew where we are heading. Then banking facilities, borrowing from third parties, financial grants, employment matters, property rights, that is freehold, leasehold properties occupied with the hotel with details of tenure in case of leasehold property, tenanted premises, licenses to occupy the property, approvals in respect of movable properties, valuation reports, if any. Then complete schedule of plant and machinery, equipment, motor vehicles, and other tangible assets indicating the ownership, lease, etc. This is very, very important to avoid future litigations. Business and operation matter. Identification of critical technologies or know-how used is very, very important. Technology has started playing a very, very leading role in operation of hotels. The dependence on the manpower is slowly coming down. The booking engine, the guest check-ins, the ordering of the menu, everything has become automated now. And if there is know-how taken from an overseas hotel, how that is managed, is very, very important. Copies of agreements use such technologies, including repairs and maintenance agreement, in relation to use of these technologies is also important. You need to have a very clear-cut agreements with the service providers like maintenance of the equipment, lifts, etc. See what the contracts are, especially in the beginning stage, you need to be very, very careful where the agreements are executed while buying the equipment very carefully. A list of major, that is more than 5% of the goods supplied in any 6 months period, suppliers identifying the product of the company. Here, a critical aspect I would like to tell about is the procurement policies adopted by the hotel. We had an environment where we could enter into annual contracts with the suppliers concerned for most of the commodities which the hotel buys. But today, the environment being very dynamic, the times have changed, and people are not willing to enter into annual contracts, and quarterly contracts become the order of the day. But at the same time, the price variations are too much in the market, and it is necessary to ensure that we buy at the rate at which you are contracted into, or if there is a downward listing in the price of the commodity, the benefit is passed on to the hotel. How do we do that? This is done by what is called a market study on a periodic basis, whereby some of the staff members of the hotel visit the markets to find out what the commodity rates are on the given day and then make a study of that so that you can compare the price charged by the concerned vendor as well as the price we paid for the item in the market, and then talk to the vendor to correct distortions if any so that the hotel benefits in the long run. But at the same time, if there is an increase in this thing, you are duty bound to pass it on to the vendor concerned, but after some negotiations. You may not pass on the entire amount to him, but at least a part of the burden need to be borne by us. Contracts. Copies of all material contracts to which the company is a party, details of breaches if any, attendant litigants issuance if any. This brings to mind the amount item which I referred to, that is non-adherence to the statement procedure as far as the loyalty program is concerned, which has resulted in long-term litigations with money not being realized, and it is not a small amount, close to about 10 million amount rupee is involved in that, and the hotel is fighting a battle with them, with at the same time pampering to the needs of the guests who already paid the money and got cheated. They are caught in the devil in the deep sea now. Then power of attorney. This needs to be handled very, very carefully. To whom all the power of attorney has been given, what are the rights the power of attorney holder can wield, and whether he has exercised correctly. This has to be seen very, very carefully. Related party contracts. This is also very, very important. Then intellectual property rights. Schedule of all property, patents, trademarks, service marks, etc. Legal proceedings, disputes and investigations, insurance policies covering all this, including public liability insurance. Here again, we need to ensure that we negotiate the insurance companies very, very carefully as far as paying the premium is concerned. I am now reminded of one particular place where I used to work as a financial controller. I had an occasion to revisit all the premiums paid by the hotel after it was commissioned, and I found out that the particular insurance company was charging 3 times more the premium which should have been charged. When this was brought to the notice of the management, you may be surprised, I was told, please do not step into this area today because some vested interests are involved in this. I said, okay, we'll take it one by one. We'll wait for 1 year and then after that you will see. The next year, when the public liability insurance came up for renewal, I got 3 quotations from them and showed to the management, this is what I've been paying. For a policy of about 5 crores, which is the minimum requirement to be maintained, the concerned insurance company were charging them around 20 lakhs as the premium, whereas the actual premium is only 5 lakhs. We could straight away say 15 lakhs of rupees, and like that's very, very important to examine all this very, very carefully. Then other matters, non-disclosure agreement to be entered into. This is very, very important before you take up any due diligence or compliance audit, because whatever is being done, it is privy between you and the party to whom you are doing the compliance audit. Then due diligence of compliance management, environmental due diligence, risk analysis, including constitution of risk management committee and its functions, meetings, minutes, identified risks, action taken to mitigate risk, etc. Establishment of data room. This is very, very important. The role of information technology, how often SOPs and processes are revisited, including risks associated. I would like to share some examples of successes which we could go through as a result of the compliance work which we did. There is this hotel which had just started its operations and was setting its processes and systems in place. Initially, after we took over, unfortunately or fortunately, we came into the picture only after the operations began, because the project team was different, and to be fair to them, it was not headed by any finance person or coordinated by any finance person. With the result, a lot of loopholes are found out. A simple example is use of the mobile telephone. During the project stage, they had given SIM cards to not less than 150 to 200 people. But as the project went on, many of them have left the hotel. But at the same time, care was not taken to see that the SIM cards are surrendered, and they continued to pay the bill to the mobile service provider, who was happy because he was getting his money. The first thing we did was set about repairing one by one all the areas. First areas to be tackled was the mobile telephone that is being used by the employees concerned. We found that only around 30 people were eligible to use the mobile phones, whereas SIM cards are more than 100. And the bill is coming to close to around 2 lakh of rupees per month. A small amount, but at the same time significant for a hotel which has just started its operations. We set about repairing everything and found that the bill that is to be paid is hardly about 30,000 rupees a month. Straight away we could say around 2 lakhs a month, which means translates to 25 lakhs per year. Then as the operation started, the need for budgeting excesses were felt, otherwise we will lose focus, because it's very important to see that we have an operating budget, we have a capital budget, everything needs to be set in place. There is a lot of resistance to our proposal. But then with great difficulty, we ensured that the budget place was put in mechanism, department-wise budgets were prepared, despite the fact the concerned departments did not cooperate with us. We set about the task of doing it. In the process, we found that there are a lot of leakages as far as the engineering department is concerned, like usage of electricity, use of water, use of diesel, everything was being wasted in a big way. All this had to be set right, and to our credit, it was ensured that in the first year of operations, we returned a gross operating margin of around 70%. It was a big achievement, not that it is a teamwork. Then, we also put in place over a period of time event-based profit and loss accounts so that it was evident that each and every event could be audited and then course correction could be done to see whether rates can be revised, whether any other this thing has to be brought in. Everything was seen. Then guest audit, then so everything night audit, everything was streamlined. These are the few examples which I give you as far as this thing is concerned. That's all from my side. If there are any questions, I welcome it. Not able to hear.
Hello. Yeah. Good morning, sir. Am I audible? Yeah. Yes, sir. Am I audible? Can I ask one question?
Yes, please,
Yes,
Dr.
Yes.
Cont.
Yes.
we
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
hear.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So I just, sir, I wanted to know what are the environmental compliance which has to be done. Any ISO standard has to be fulfilled in tourism sector.
Yes, yes, we have to. We are welcome to do it.
Yes.
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 Including ISO 14001 is applicable. We have to. It lends credence to the operations of the hotel.
Sir, you are on mute, sir.
Oh, home is on mute here. I'm not able to hear anything. Home.
Whom you're on mute.
Home. No, he is on mute.
Now I think it should be better.
Yeah, I am here. I never heard you at all.
Now?
Now I am able to hear you.
Okay. Now I was just wondering in the hill terrain and mountains.
Yeah.
So what are the special permissions that are required?
That I think ask Varma. I have not exposed myself to that terrain at all. Home.
See, Om, the biggest thing is there are two critical issues that one needs to seek when you're. It's not just hills and mountains. It could be anything
Anything.
that is considered as deemed forest area. So, the first thing is the environmental clearance. I think that's the biggest thing. And of course, the wildlife. So these two you have to get clarity on, because the definitions, of course, the definitions of a forest are pretty archaic. And where they say that if you have more than 100 or 200 trees over a certain area, that is deemed forest, even if it's not, even if it's not a declared forest. So one has to be very, very careful about when setting up resorts in hilly areas, mountain areas, and be very, very particular, because there are certain, and particularly, let's say the Western Ghats, the typical example in southern India is the Western Ghats. A lot of people who have tried setting up resorts there, but they've all run into problems because of the environmental and wildlife issues. There's an elephant buffer zone, there's a tiger buffer zone, there's a XYZ buffer zone. There's so many issues involved. So one needs to be very careful.
But then how do you explain the mushrooming of the resorts in our Bandipur forest area? There are so many which have come up. Are you trying to say they would have violated the laws concerned?
I wouldn't say that, but there are certain do's and don'ts. As long as you get clearance from the Wildlife and the Environment Ministry, and as long as you do not go for a constructed area which is beyond a certain limitation, and as long as the structure that you build up are tented structures, they are not permanent civil structures, then the government allows you to set up those kind of resorts. So that's why you will see not a single very large resort, unless it's historically been there for years. But otherwise, any new resorts that have come up are all mostly tented. You will see those low height, tented, which merges with the environment.
But how do you position this homestay and service department? They also have to follow all the norms, or
Yes,
they
yes,
have
they have to follow all the norms. That is why you're finding that many homestays in areas like Coorg, etc., are all run into trouble now. They have followed no norms, nothing they have done. They just opened it for the heck of opening it up. They follow no norms whatsoever. They are under serious trouble now. One day or the other they'll have to shut shop. It's a matter of time.
Technically, you are supposed to register and license your homestay as well.
Exactly. Many of them have not done it.
If I'm not mistaken, nearly 90% of them are not even registered.
No, they are not even registered. Yeah. Clandestinely they are operating. And they don't maintain any standards.
I have seen a lot of old houses, heritage buildings getting converted into homestay. And these guys don't do any registration. Simply They put on advertisement, or by word of mouth, people start going there and staying. But if something goes wrong, nobody is accountable.
No, only God alone has to help you. What happens is, perhaps the awareness among the traveling public is also not all that good. To expect some standards. As Verma will agree, it is a corporate traveler who is well aware of all the things that he is expected to follow. He will raise even courage. The ordinary traveler wants all that is a shelter to go. And then he looks for the typical Indian mentality of something for nothing. So so long as that basic thing is given to him, he is happy. So these fellows thrive on that psychology. That's a problem.
Okay, I think it's time for us to close down the meeting. And before closing, I would request Mr. Verma to address the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Om. And Mr. Subramaniam, I think we have had a real good privilege of hearing you speak today.
But it was a little fast, sir. I'm sorry for this, because it was quite interesting.
In fact, I have taken a learning from that as well. Your presentation was so comprehensive and so concise. The number of subjects that you covered in a brief half-an-hour presentation actually takes us a lifetime to actually understand and comprehend.
It takes a lot of time, sir. It's not easy.
No,
No, what I'm saying, even to explain this, you need about 2 to 3 hours. Point by point if you go.
No, as I think, to take a leaf out of your presentation, I'm actually strongly recommending Om that we should convert this into a 3-month diploma program for our members.
Very good. I'll be happy to do it.
We'll drive it.
Happy to do it.
Yes. No, it's something which is really required. It should be a certification program, because when you cannot just undermine the importance of compliances today, due diligence today. I think it's really critical. I have seen many institutions and organizations get into serious trouble for no fault of their own, except that they were ignorant of certain compliances.
So, sir, I will tell you one thing. Sorry to interrupt you. So, if I may, it is not only ignorance, it is a little bit of indifference on the part of the people concerned in giving a very, very lenient attitude towards complying with the laws and regulations. They feel so long as we comply, it is enough. They don't understand that it is necessary to comply on time. It's very, very important. This I learned from one of my bosses who said, don't try to comply in time. Be on time on everything. That's very, very important. That is when we introduced this concept called compliance chart and followed through it on a regular basis to ensure that we don't fall back on anything. We follow it even to date among the people whom wherever I am doing consultancy, I ensure that it is done. In fact, recently I conducted a compliance audit for a manufacturing company where we found out a lot of loopholes in the 7 years of existence of the company. And they ended up paying hefty fine to MCA. Why waste precious money that is with you? If you comply, there is no need to pay fine. But what to do? People are not aware of it. Sorry, sir. Sorry.
No, that's good, useful input from your side. So as I was coming to you, made a comment about the number of licenses and compliances required to operate a hotel. So since we have hotels in different states of India,
I know.
I, in a lighter way, I always say that I've done my PhD on compliances. So, to give you an example, let's say in Karnataka, the last count that I have is 128 licenses and compliances
Exactly,
required
there are 128.
to start a hotel and run it successfully.
Yes, exactly.
And Tamil Nadu is double that number, the number of compliances.
And then we tout our around saying that we promote tourism, we encourage. See, do you know one thing, sir? It is about 20 years since we have been fighting the government to accord infrastructure status to the industry. Till today, it has not been done by the government.
It has been. I wanted to give you that information, see, because from a Karnataka Tourism Society, we have been pushing for it. And I'm happy to tell you that it's officially been announced. Industry status has been given to classified hotels in Karnataka.
But you need it all over India.
No, it's coming to that as well. In fact, Gujarat has done it already. Maharashtra has done it already. Karnataka has done it also. Except that in Karnataka, it is yet to be physically rolled out. Like the concerned departments, be it the ESCOMs of the state and whatever, they need to start accepting this and accepting and offering us industrial rates and power. So that also we are pushing for it. So that's happening. So to be fair to the government of Karnataka, they have been moving ahead, though a bit slow. I wish they were a little faster. So having said that, on a certain granular note also in terms of compliances, as some of the people who may be on this panel who are in the operations of the hotel, there are certain examples that, compliances, while Mr. Subramaniam covered almost every aspect of it, I want to highlight certain day-to-day aspects that also one needs to be very careful of. Simple thing like, the GST reconciliation. What happens is that, that you as a company who owns hotels, you probably go ahead and take ITC, input tax credit, whereas the corresponding vendor probably has not even filed his return.
Exactly.
And this is where we have got into serious trouble because you get penalized.
Exactly.
If you have taken ITC against something where and so it's very critical that your finance department, your audit department reconciles GST with the vendors, goes after them, and and puts in processes where the vendor is compelled to file his returns on time. This is one example. The other example is now MSME payments. There's something which is again very critical. When you are liable to make payments to MSMEs within a stipulated time. If you don't,
45 days.
There's a penalty. And there's something new that I learned recently is that in case that MSME is not he's not declared it to you. Suppose you're aware of that. Apparently, the default payment time is only 15 days. So there are certain things that you have to be very particular about. I think you need to be very well aware of all these issues. Shop and Establishment Act. You're talking about termination. I don't want to use the word termination because that is, we actually furloughed people. We temporarily laid them off. We went in for salary cuts. But when you're talking about salary reduction, it was a voluntary reduction. At the same time, one has to be very particular about the Minimum Wages Act in the state. Obviously, when you reduce salaries, you have to also make sure that the minimum wages are not defaulted.
Exactly.
So, so many such examples that one has to be sort of really very particular about. I think the subject matter is really important. And I seriously feel that, that we should pick it up as a more like an extended training program for our members, for our hoteliers and the likes.
I'll be glad to associate myself, sir.
So with those few words, once again, thank you, Mr. Subramaniam. I think
thank you, sir.
I only wish we had a much larger audience,
exactly.
But because of being a working day, I guess it's not happened. But it doesn't stop us from having another session with you at a much larger platform.
Definitely.
And maybe we'll do it physically.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we'll do it physical. That's what I wanted to say.
And with the temptation to the audience of a free lunch also at a hotel.
In fact, I'm going to come back to you with this request for this thing. We are going to have a meeting on the 11th of April.
Okay.
In fact, I had one meeting we organized in Gateway.
Yes.
The next is also due now. We have to organize. I am a part of the Cutting Tools Manufacturer Association as secretary.
Sure.
Where we organize regular board meetings followed by members meeting at the same place. So normally it is held in Bangalore. So we like to organize it.
At a World Trade Center or whatever, my colleague Vivek is also on the panel today. I'm sure he's listening. So he'll reach out to you and see what is done about.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, I am.
Definitely.
So thank you everyone for attending, and thank you once again, Mrs. Subramanian, and Om, thank you for the opportunity. It was
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
very
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.